Good day, everybody. Paul Sterling here, and there we go, Jessica. Uh, is it said Saint Michelle? Is that the proper pronunciation? It's so amazing. And we are here today with the topic of courageous communication. And I want to say that this is one of the most important topics that I know of as a relationship and communication coach. And I invited Jessica to be on with me too, so that we could have a powerful feminine representation. And I'm hearing a tiny bit of clicking. Are you hearing the clicking too, or is that just me? Hopefully it's just me, because we had to cancel last week. It was a horrendous clicking. So let's dive in. Jessica's joining us from Hawaii. I'm north of Napa Valley in California. What I'd love to do is if you could text in where you're joining us from in the world right now. And this is an interactive call. In other words, you can ask questions. We'll see it over here on the banner. It will feed in. We will try to answer them as much as we can. Otherwise, it's just a conversation between me and Jessica, and we want it to be inclusive. And we want to dive in and give you some practical tools. So hopefully grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, and we're going to take you on a journey. So Jessica, maybe you could say, what was the turning point that got you on this journey? What was the dark night of the soul or something that said things have to change and got you to be where you are right now?
That moment came in April 2018, so about 2.5 years ago, and I was in a very toxic relationship, and it was one in which we triggered each other and bringing up each other's shadows, and we really, it was a very catalytic moment for us, where I was the fuse and he was the TNT, and there's a lot of hurt that was unearthed, and it reached a point where I decided to choose myself over my relationship. And I knew that relationship was dying. I knew that I was compromising a lot of who I was to be in something that wasn't bringing me to my fullest light and joy. And but I didn't know what that looked like. I had no idea the path I would embark or the journey I would be on. I certainly did not see 2.5 years ago that I would be doing what I'm doing now and being who I'm being now. But that was a turning point. I know my life is meant for more than this. I know that I deserve to be the best version of who I came here to be. And I also deserve to be in a relationship where we can accept each other for who we are rather than dating potential. And yeah.
Can I dive in a few times? Things have changed so much in the world of relationships. And that you even have that choice. There used to be a time when it was considered, once you married someone or were in that relationship, it was a relationship for life. And the rules, the roles, the dynamics, everything is changing. And it's no longer considered a wise choice to stay in a relationship that's sucking the life out of you. And this whole platform called relationships is changing what we want from it. So what do you want from a courageous, well, I'm saying courageous, what do you want from a relationship now? What's different?
Whew, big question. I think back then I wasn't willing to step into my full power. And so it was a lot easier for me to project and also to see the other at fault and them not living their truth and their fullness. And so for me, I've walked my path of humility and been through many of my shadows. And of course, that's a lifelong journey. But I also feel quite confident in who I am as someone who's all in and shows up with courage. And if there's anything that I can speak to in my life, it is taking the courageous path over and over again and making the courageous choice, even when there is no guarantee. and also when there's no promise that someone is going to respond the way that I want them to.
Yeah, I have been on a diet of Brene Brown, like binge watching, and the the people. A lot of people want courage without vulnerability, um, but they can't have that. What makes it courageous is vulnerability, and what makes us vulnerable is we don't know the outcome. There's a risk. There's an emotional risk. We don't know how they're going to behave. If we show up, are they going to leave the relationship? If we behave courageously, what serves us? And so we're going to dive into what is vulnerable, courageous communication, and how do you deal with shame and embarrassment, because those are right there with vulnerability. Oh my God, it's like um, I have the shame gremlins that chase me around every once in a while. And it's like anytime that you're a public figure, like we're both public figures, you've got a tribe of at least 1,400 amazing women in your Facebook group, growing all the time. And so you're like in a leadership position. And so there's always a chance that any of your screw ups are publicly shown. And it's like, how do you deal with shame and embarrassment in life and in your relationships? So let me just give a picture here for people to look at here. And what we're going to look at right now, and this is what you were actually saying, is there was a gap where you are now or where you were in that relationship and where you wanted to be. And it's like looking at how do we cross the gap? How do we get from where we are to where we want to be? And most people think that it's more information. So I'm going to kind of set the framework and then ask you some more questions about it. But okay, Americans love their diets. And when I looked on Google, there was 26,900,000 different responses to diet. So there's millions of sites out there, and yet we're obese. So there was plenty of information, and yet we're still an obese nation. I looked at relationship advice, and it was 94,800,000. So we have lots of information about relationships. You could read for the rest of your life. And you know what? It's not going to help. It's not about information. Courage is not information. And we're going to dive into what it takes to be courageous. And the last thing, you look at all that information, and how are we doing? Well, we've been on this call for 8 minutes, and every 31 seconds, somebody has gotten a divorce in the United States. So that's an average. The average is between 876,000 and a million a year. So it wasn't more information. We've never had more information, and we've never had more divorces. So that's not what makes a relationship work. And the damage is to the families, to the kids, friends, everything. So what's it take to be courageous? And I'm going to hand it back to you in a second, Jessica, but that quote there is, ships are safe in the harbor, but that's not what ships are for. And so what do you see from the feminine side as courageous? Because the relationship between the masculine and the feminine is very different now than it's ever been.
Yeah, so I just want to be present to, like, my hands are sweating right now. And, I think part of it was making the comment that we're public figures. And, I think that I know that what has made me a very powerful leader in the group that I'm in is that I show my shadows, is that I am very transparent, that I tell them of the challenges that I've been through, of the stumbling blocks, that I have people in my life that are shadow hunting with me, that are keeping track of when I speak, not in integrity with who I be and what is the highest level of who I am and how I show up. I've actually known that it is those skeletons in the closets that become the leverage for those who are public and are afraid of their shadows and their darkness to be seen. I stand differently. I'm a priestess. I'm a shaman. I'm an oracle. I'm a dominatrix. Like, these are the things that I stand for. And so to show up with courage of what it is I'm here to do, and letting them know that it is okay to be seen. It is when we are afraid of our shadows, and we all have got them, but it's being willing to
Well, what
show it. That's what makes me powerful, and that's what gives me power. Is I'm not giving power to the shadow. I'm embracing it, I'm holding it, I'm carrying with it, and I'm still going forward.
right? I got a picture as you were talking. It's almost like the picture of
I'm
it's
sorry.
people
Froze.
afraid of what they have in the closet. I'm froze. All right, and I'm getting that darn clicking again. I don't understand it. Hopefully, it's not too bad for your side. Okay, so what I see you doing is opening up your closet and shining the light in there and saying, "Would you like to look in my closet with me?" So it doesn't have any power. It's like when you shine the light in the closet, it no longer has the power that it did. And we were talking last week, and my ex sent me this and said you might be interested in this, and this is an interesting thing. It says this is about the divine masculine, supposedly, and it triggered the hell out of me. So people misunderstand. It says an awakened man leads with love and integrity. He has healed his masculine wounds and knows exactly who he is. He is deeply present and in tune with his emotions. He is in perfect harmony with the divine feminine. He lays down his ego and with true masculine energy demonstrates what it is like to return to love. Now, all of it sounds good. It sounds a lot like, what was that song about? I am a woman. I can cook from 9 to 5. I can do the dashes. I can look great. It's like the problem with a definition like that for the masculine or for the feminine, it's like static. I have arrived. I have landed. I am now divine. It's like I went to the gym. I nailed, I never have to go back again. To me, the divine, the journey that I'm on is it's constantly a choice. There's no arrival. I can follow the North Star, but every day there's going to be a graduation course. There's going to be the next place. Do I behave with integrity here, or do I slip off that? How do I deal with my fear and my courage and my shame, or do I hide from it? Where is it? So it's like holding the masculine or the feminine to this static idea versus we're fluid and we're constantly building our muscles or we're shrinking. So what's your thoughts on that one?
I was given such a profound gift a couple of days ago, and I actually had the opportunity to connect with your ex, and she's a really fantastic, stellar woman. And I'm very, very grateful that I've been able to, connect with her and hear, about life and what it is to be a woman in this world. It is not easy. And the divine masculine, you know, it's funny. We try to be divinity in form, and also understanding that we have tremendous humanness that we walk with. And it is really easy to get off kilter and fall into our shadows and our ego than it is to strive for that divine North Star and being congruent with that in our messaging, both in how we show up in front of the camera and who we are behind it. These are the congruent motions and moves and choices that we make every day of how we choose to show up in this world. Um, and I'm really recognizing that those who show up the same in the front and back are going to be the ones who rise.
Mm.
So, who are we in the front of the camera that we're not behind the scenes? And what shadows are we willing to look at? And again, that's part of the mirrors of our partners, is to show us our shadows. And are we willing to listen and look and see and do whatever it takes? Because we're here to be divine partners for each other, divine players. Um, so for me to rise as the divine feminine and channeling that, for me, it's actually not being in a relationship right now. It's taking a vow of
Hmm.
celibacy because I know I am not safe with men right now. So
Hmm.
there's these choices that we make of how do we rise, how do we show up, how do we align with that star, which I call the star of Venus, the goddess of love. You know, how do we show up in that? So it is very challenging to be in alignment with the divine feminine, and yet it's not. It's just, are we getting off center to please our partner when ultimately we're here to answer the call of our soul?
Right. There's actually a great quote that Brene Brown uses a lot, and I'm going to read it. And then this was from Theodore Roosevelt, and it says, "It is not the critic that counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done it better. The credit belongs to the man or woman who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, great devotions? Who spends himself in a worthy cause? Who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, or who at the worst, if he fails, at least knows he fails daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with the cold, timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." And that to me, that was a turning point for her. And it's really a challenge for me. I'm dyslexic, I'm ADD, I'm grammarly impaired. Um, Writing something is a challenge. Writing my book was a real challenge. And being in a relationship, even for a relationship coach, you spoke to my ex, it's a challenge. It was, and we were two amazing people, and I actually dedicate my book is dedicated to the women that have been my mentors in my life. I have been lucky enough to be in relationships with many different amazing women. Um, and God, sometimes it was sweet and sometimes it was really hard. So, what have been some of your lessons that you're taking forward?
I mean, it's really quite simple. And also, your book is brilliant. I love his book, Argue Less, Love More. An incredible book. Paul's work is one that I think every couple should have a copy of in every household around the world. I stand by that. I stand by that. It's a 2.5 hour read. It's better than any movie you'll watch, period. In terms for me, in the choices that I've made, it is being willing to say the challenging thing, to be able to speak my truth. And, you know, the things that keep us, that we're afraid to share, is actually what creates the separation. And
Mm.
so to have the radical honesty and to have the courageous courage, and it sucks and it is not easy, it is hard, it is all of the things, it is so scary, and worth it. And I would rather have people know how I feel in the moment to moment than for me to lie or hide things about me. Maybe it takes me a little while to understand why I'm feeling a certain way, and to be able to verbalize it. But I'm done choking and swallowing my truth for the sake of anyone, because that's not what truly living is.
So, I would love for people, if something that I'm saying or that Jessica's saying that you really resonate with, type in the comment, "Me too," or "Got it," or something. Reach out to us. Have it be a dialogue here, a back and forth. Um, and I'm going to lay out, oh God, a little bit of what is typical in communication. And in typical in communication, starts up here, and this is this downward spiral. Somebody doesn't feel heard, understood, or valued. And then what happens is the harder you try, the worse it gets. You end up tripping each other's triggers. And the more that you trip each other's triggers, there ends up being a constant conflicts, eroding trust and intimacy. And it takes days, and in some cases, weeks to recover, and sometimes never. And I was talking to my mom recently, and my dad, one of the things I learned from my dad was great, and he was an asshole. He was Irish Catholic, recovering Catholic, alcoholic. And one of his things from growing up in the Depression, he said, the best defense is a strong offense. And that may be good in a football field, but it's no good with the divine feminine, where he used his masculinity as an attack versus he using it as a way to create safety, like you said, Jessica. So this is typical. And I work with couples all around the world, and I help them turn this cycle, which is this downward spiral, into, come on, what's this one right here? Whoops. Where you both feel heard, understood, and valued. And if you can relate to this, let me know. You can meet each other's triggers, because no matter how much you do, like Jessica, do you still have some things that trigger you?
Totally.
Yeah, and no matter how hard we work on ourselves, I've been doing this I've been coaching couples for over 25 years and working on myself for 30 or 40 years, and I still am triggerable. But can we meet the triggers with courage, compassion, and curiosity? And when we do, that communication builds trust and intimacy. You become more confident and know how to repair upsets, because no matter what, you're going to have upsets. And you can rebound in minutes or maybe hours when it used to take weeks or days. And I wonder if you have anything to say about that, because I hadn't showed you that cycle before.
We have to be willing to lose it all every day. We have to be willing to risk it all and lose it all. We have to be willing. We have, to me, are you willing to sacrifice your relationship every day? Are you willing for it to die, to be born into something bigger or greater than what it was? Or maybe for it to die and have it be done. And there's something about that valiant living in the arena, the blood and sweat on your brow, and facing things with your partner who is divinity in form and there to show you the light by showing you your darkness and your shadows. Are you willing to put that on the altar every day? It's not easy. I'm not saying I'm an expert. It's, again, the reason why I'm choosing to be celibate for right now and to not be in a relationship for 6 months, because I need to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And how I do that is through my connection to the divine. I do whatever it takes every day. And the more that I do that to myself and model that, the more I know that that's what I attract in my life. And eventually there will be a partner who will say yes to that call as well.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, I'm going to bring up and draw a little picture so that people can see, find some space here. If you think about it, this is not a perfect model here, but there are 3 basic purposes for being in a relationship. There is the old one, which is survive. My mind just went totally blank. Like I can't spell a thing. Survival. There should be a bunch of.
It's really funny, Paul. Karen
Yeah.
Karen just left a comment. She said, is it possible to not look at the images and just see your faces? It's so much more meaningful. So just know that I agree. And this is Paul's show. But thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Survival. Comfort. Growth. And see, if you think about it, in the old days, what what was important in relationships, it was about survival. It didn't matter whether, and there's still people that are in survival relationships. Doesn't even matter if we like each other. We're not getting a divorce because the relationship is more important. The second level up, which is comfort, this is don't rock the boat. Don't have the conversation. That's where like people will have affairs, but they won't talk about polyamory because polyamory is an open, honest, scary conversation where an affairs is like we're avoiding the conversation, but we're trying to get our needs met backhandedly. So it's like learning what do you want? And then the third level up there, and I'm not making anyone better than the other. The top one is growth, and growth is unfucking comfortable. You know, I was going to make that PG, but decided not to. Um, it's a challenge. You know, I was married once. I went through one marriage, 4 broken engagements. I'm sort of the test dummy for relationships. I have been through almost everything, and my marriage. I'm still really good friends with Corrine, my ex. We met when I was probably 20 years old. And she was more about comfort. I was more about growth. And we were just like hanging on to the edges. If we went to Hawaii together, she wanted to lay on the beach. I wanted to go walk on fire with Tony Robbins. It's like, you know, it was just a different world. And it's good to find somebody who's at least close in their purpose. If they're about survival, it's good to be a survival, you know, in that relationship or comfort or growth. And what you're saying, Jessica, is right now for you, growth is what seems to be the key. So I'm handing it back to you with that.
Thank you. Growth has always been a part of it. But a lot of that growth was driven by pain. It was driven by not feeling good enough. It was driven by wanting to earn someone's love, to win it. And now the growth is in my own personal commitment and development to self, to being the best that I'm here to be and to shine my light as bright as I am meant to, rather than wanting to be good enough for somebody else. Because I've also realized that my soulmate isn't outside of me, it's myself. So that kind of takes a lot of that pressure off of needing to find another person to fulfill me and be my other half. There is no other half. I am perfect, whole, and complete. And so it's about getting into that alignment. So for me, like the courageous path is one that's like, you know what, I'm willing to do this alone. I am doing it alone. I am doing it on my own. And you know what? It actually has me more connected to the divine than anything else I've done in my life. So yeah, it's a good place to be. Oh, you're muted.
Okay. Am I still muted?
You're good.
Okay. Well, the person who said no more of the videos, I mean of the images, they somehow they got it. My screen just went blank on there, so there's going to be no more images, which is really frustrating to me because I went and did a lot of work on creating them. So I'm going to give it one more quick try. Let me just touch on courage. And there, I draw this triangle now when I'm talking about communication and when we get triggered and when we get scared and where do you go to. So I'm going to ask you where you go to. I'm going to ask the people on the call, where do they go to? So at the bottom, I'll do the bottom. The lower left is collapsed. The lower right is combative. And so what collapsed means is when under pressure, like I had a puppy, and my puppy, when a big dog would charge him, he could lie on his back and he just collapsed. He goes, okay, I give up. There's no fight. Whatever, your needs are more important than mine. And my need for safety and protection is more important than fighting. So there's the collapse, and then there's the combative side, which is I cannot lose. I would rather die than lose. My older brother was the combative. I was the collapsed because he would beat me until I collapsed. So for my own safety and survival, the sooner I did it, the better. The challenge is, as a mature adult that's now 6'3" and 230 pounds, collapse doesn't do well in relationships. But that is your trauma drama line. So is that making sense? The bottom on one side's collapsed, on the other side's combative. And at the top is courageous. And that's when you get triggered, but you don't go to collapse and you don't go to combative. So an example of combative is our current president. You know, a person that can't embody making a mistake, can't be with something discomfortable, uncomfortable. So where have you been in your life? Do you go collapse? Do you go combative? Do you go courageous? Do you go to all three? Like I've been to all three, but I'd like to hear how you've been.
All three. And I think too, in the past, when I would stand up to be quote unquote courageous, I was coming from a wounded place. And so that wounded courage had a sense of self-righteousness, and had a sense of I don't know, whatever you want to call it. We'll just for right now say self-righteousness. I feel righteous in this, um, and justified, and I'm taking one for the underdog, and and for myself, and like this, like this crusader. And I think now when I show up in courage, it's from a very centered. I mean, who knows? I'm sure. To me, my desire is that it's coming from a centered place, and also owning, like, wow, this is how I'm feeling right now, and checking in with my body. And I think one of the biggest gifts that we can have is when we're speaking, what is going on in our body? What are the sensations in it? Can we name them? That's part of the vulnerability, is that we've been taught to have this mask, and just be this like protection in speaking, and that we're invulnerable, that we can't be touched. And there's something about, like, I go here, I speak from here, and I'm feeling upset as I'm sharing this, and I'm really scared. I don't know how to speak right now, but I'm going to do my best. It's might be a little messy. Are you open?
See, you touched on a really amazing and beautiful spot. And hopefully there's a person, Dr. Sue Johnson, who wrote Hold Me Tight, and it's a great book and talks about the attachment theory. And part of what she's talking about right now is when we get triggered, we can look at our partner as either the enemy or the ally. If I see you as the enemy, I try to defend myself from you. I don't reveal my vulnerabilities. I don't talk about my weaknesses. I try to put up I'm going to tell you, no, that doesn't bother me, when it bothers the hell out of me and makes me scared. And the courageous communication is to lean in to my fear and say, when you said that, I got a twinge. So I'll give you an example of being vulnerable. When you said that you talked to my ex this week, I noticed that even though I feel pretty clear about, the ending of the relationship and all the rest of that, is like part of me went like, I stopped breathing for a second and I went, wow. And then I went to trust and trusting myself and being with it and trusting her. She's got a good heart, and trusting you. And the interesting thing, she's talked to my brother. And what I love about my family is that my family is a stand for people. Like, even though the relationship ended, it's not like it ended and now she's in the enemy camp and they have to pick sides. It's like, no, during our relationship, she made friends with my family. She's still a friend of the family. This is how the moving forward, I want somebody after the relationship, even if it ends, that they're in better shape at the end of the relationship than they were at the beginning, that I left something behind and made a difference for them. So, and how to be courageous, and that's my ongoing work. And I also, the other ongoing work though is for me to the trauma drama line, collapsed, combative, is to be compassionate with myself when I'm down there, when I collapse and go, oh, I just noticed I collapsed. And of course I did. Like the little kid in me, you know, he used to get beaten, and to have compassion for him that he would do what he needed to do to protect himself, and to meet that with, and there was so many years that I met that with shame and being embarrassed about it. And it's like, until you can embrace it, you can't change it. So, all right, I said a lot. I want to hand it back and hear what you have to say.
I think it's beautiful that that you've stayed in touch with your ex and that you've kept the communications open and going, and for your family to know that, that just because the relationship between the two of you ends, that doesn't mean that there can't be a friendship that's created and blossomed. And one of my dearest, most treasured relationships was the mother of my very first boyfriend back in college. And, 20 years later, I reached out to her and we're still in touch. My mom was dying 15 years ago. She asked her to keep an eye over me and to watch over me. And she has over the years, and checking in to see what I'm up to and what I'm doing. And, so that's the beauty of, what's possible. Love can transcend anything, even if it's beyond the container of the relationship. So I appreciate the vulnerability, and, I'm still mending. No, actually I'm feeling pretty good. From a few months ago of a relationship that, didn't exit. It wasn't a graceful exit. I think we could have done better. Uh, and it was what was necessary in that moment, and I wouldn't change it, but there's this state of, how do I show up, and how do I own my truth, and how do I stay in, in my heart, and also in my power. And that's not always one and the same.
Yeah, and there's a question there from Karen saying, how do you heal your wounds? And I'm going to offer one aspect, and I'd love to hear your aspect, because there are many different ways to heal wounds. And a couple of years ago, I went over the handlebars of my mountain bike, and when I did, I landed and broke this hand, the fourth metacarpal, and for months I had a splint on it, because if you don't protect it, you make the wound worse. So like you saying 6 months, no relationships, like there's a chance to heal whatever the wound was. And I'm not saying that that's exactly why you did it. I'm just mixing metaphors here. But if I kept that same splint on my hand 2 years later, my muscles would start to atrophy. And a lot of times what happens is, if we put a splint, we put up a wall to protect ourselves. And see what happens, there's a huge difference between walls and boundaries. A wall shuts things out. A wall is like the splint. A wall, people put a wall around their heart. And like the quote earlier that I had is, ships may be safe in the harbor, but that's not what ships are for. Your heart may be safe if you stay by yourself the rest of your life. And I'm not talking about you, Jessica, I'm talking in general. But it's like, that's not what our heart is for. We are going to get hurt. I talked about my pet. If you're a pet owner, most likely your pet is going to die before you do. Sorry, spoiler alert. Most relationships now, or a large part of them, are going to end before we do. Somebody leaves, somebody dies. So the question is, are you willing to be courageous, or are you going to play half in. Like, I noticed that for me, um, there are times in my relationships where I haven't played all in. I was protecting myself. I was like playing, waiting for some magical sign to go, all right, this is it, play all in, go for it, run your heart out. And I realized that sucked. It sucked the life out of the relationship. It sucked. It wasn't fun for me. It wasn't fun for my partner. So it's like, how do we get courageous, play all in, take off the splint? You're going to get hurt again. You're not going to figure it out. Like, I talked to this one woman, she said, I'm going to stop dating until I figure it out. And I go, how are you going to figure it out if you're not dating? It's like looking at the buffet, and if you look at the buffet long enough, you'll know what you're supposed to eat. No, you go to the buffet and you try the food, and some of it sucks and some of it's good. And the way you learn about what you like is by doing something. So anyway, I'm going to hand it back to you here, Jessica. We're kind of bouncing around with this one.
Oh, that's a perfect question. I really appreciate Karen asking. For me, one of the things that I'm learning is if you are wounded, what was it in that person that attracted you in the first place? What was it in yourself that brought it in? Because a lot of times we're attracted through our traumas. So we have a trauma wound that needs to be healed. And so we're going to attract the thing that brings that trauma awake and alive in us. So there's a lot of people who get into abusive relationships over and over and over again. Well, why is that? It's because there's a trauma that's waiting to be healed, and it's going to attract the thing that causes it because it's ready to be seen, it's ready to be healed, it's ready to be completed, but we don't know that. And then for myself, I was an empath, because I chose not to be anymore, but I had this pattern of attracting narcissists to the point that I didn't even know it until like the day I was out of the relationship and I had completed it and I had ended it. And I was like, that was a narcissist. Damn it, I did it again. How is this possible? And so the thing is because there were pieces of me that were unhealed. And so it was just so easy to bring it in. And a lot of them are unhealed pieces from our childhood, from our caregivers, from our parents, usually. And so if we're able to shift out of that this person is a perpetrator or an abuser or a narcissist or, whatever it is, and if we're able to look at them as divine mirrors, that they did come into our path to show us a piece of us that wasn't healed yet, and show us a piece of us that's ready to be reclaimed. And then we can look at each other as divine players rather than as, triggers for each other or woundings. It shifts it. It takes it up an octave in consciousness and also how we show up and play. And that, I'm not saying by any means I'm perfect. And Paul's right. You don't know. I mean, that relationship I was in for a few months this year, man, it was shadow work every freaking day. Every day. Every day I was facing my shadows. Every day I was facing my attachment, anxious attachment. Every day. And then it reached a point where the pain was not commensurate to the joy. And one of the best pieces of advice I received years ago from a woman, she said the relationships should never be so much work that they take the joy out of them. When you've lost your joy, then it doesn't matter how hard you work. And it always comes back to us. Always. Are we willing to face our shadows? Are we willing to heal our own wounds? That's not something for someone else to do for us. It's there for them to help us see it and be there, but it's our own work to do. And that's a big part of shamanism. There's no white knight in shining armor. Don't look for that. Because the white knight,
Damn.
hold on, because the white knight hasn't looked at his own shadows yet. So because he can't see them, all he wants to do is rescue you from the pain that you're in and whisk you off into the sunset, into his kingdom, where he's in his own shit that he hasn't looked at. So the best thing that you can do is be willing to go and see your shadows and go in the dark and save yourself. Get yourself out. That's a big part of what I teach and what I show and what I guide. There's no rescuing or saving or enabling each other. We're going down in there together. So that, I hope that helps. That was a pretty high level share, but I trust that you got the message.
So I just want to, I know that somebody said they don't like the images as much, but sometimes I want to just show the images, maybe because a little kid inside me made them and loves to show them. But what you just described um, is we're in three different zones. In the center is the comfort zone, and that's our habits and patterns. And that's where, when you said he whisks you off, he whisks you off into his comfort zone. Um, and then the place where we start to grow and we start to learn is the courageous zone. And that's where, when you said earlier your palms were sweating a little bit, and I went through my shame stories. This is that area. How long can we spend out of our comfort zone, but in the courageous zone where we're growing, where we're stretching, where we're uncomfortable, where we don't have all the answers, and we make ourselves vulnerable? And it's like the one of the things that Sue Johnson's talking about and Hold Me Tight is like revealing your weak spots. Like, I'm scared when this happens, or this is my raw spot, or this is my wound, and not thinking that your partner is going to use that against you. And growing up, man, it was used against us. My And then the third zone, which we're trying not to get over into too much, is the terror zone. So comfort zone, growth zone, terror zone. And in relationships, how can we be in a relationship where we spend a lot of time outgrowing, stretching, becoming comfortable with stuff that used to make us really uncomfortable, those conversations about, and one of the core conversations is about feelings and needs. And I do a lot of work and with couples, and the women have been culturally taught not to be needy, and it gets perceived as not having needs. So even though one of the most important things of a relationship is to get your needs met, and when it stops happening, relationship's over. um, and then the challenge is we have a hard time talking about it. And I've wondered, Jessica, for you, what was your programming around needs? And I've got a dog whining at the door who's got a need to come in, and so I'm going to mute myself and let him in for a second.
Yeah. Whew. So thank you all for watching. So I would say that I've been called many things: needy, too needy, high maintenance, resentful, entitled, arrogant. I've been called bratty. There's a lot of things I've been called. And here's the thing, is that are you able to provide for your own needs, knowing that at the end of the day, ultimately, you're a sovereign being and you are perfectly whole and complete. And there's certain things that matter to me. Connection matters, presence matters. But it's also understanding the why. And one of the biggest things that I got out of my relationship this year was, are my needs like truly from a human place, like a human need place? Is it from my anxious attachment? Is it from my shadow? Where did these needs come from? And it was interesting because there was that, it's okay if you have your needs, doesn't mean I'm going to honor the request.
Right.
So for me, like one of my needs was connection, and my request was, could I have a morning message from you? That would mean a lot. And he was like, no, that doesn't feel good to me. And so there wasn't a renegotiation. Okay. So there's the being vulnerable and courageous to state your need, being vulnerable and courageous to make your request, and then being vulnerable and courageous to accept what is spoken back, the yes or the no, or the how about this instead. And it is that is a warrior path walk. It's not for the for the weak. That is for the brave. But you know what? There are some people who it lights them up to send a morning message every day, and it lights them up to do those things. So it's about identifying what are my needs that are must-haves, non-negotiables. I must have a need for connection. I must have my need met for presence. And then what are some other needs that are nice to have, but not actual, like those are things I can provide for myself. And you know what? It's okay to be needy. And you know what? It's okay to want to be treated a certain way. And you know what? It's okay to want a morning message every day from someone that you love a lot. It's okay to have that and want that. And you know what? If that person isn't willing to bring that to you and know that that brings you joy and fulfillment, then they're not there for you. Yeah. And that's okay. It's okay because as women, we also should know to do what pleases us, not our partner. So just because our partner may want something every day that they think would be great for them, if it doesn't feel good for you to do it, don't do it. And that's one of the biggest things where women erode from being in their power to being a pleaser. When you become a pleaser, you lose yourself.
This is a great topic to dive just a tiny bit deeper, because there's the story of no means no, like around sex and sexuality. If the woman doesn't want to have sex, no means no. And how do you say it in a way that keeps the connection, that you don't do what you don't want to do, but how do you say, rather than just no and no means no, it's like no, and I'm wondering if you're feeling really disappointed or maybe heartbroken or maybe sad. It's like, the more that you can keep the connection and keep the connection with yourself, the better it's going to be, and the easier it will be to say no if you need to. It's an interesting dance.
So this is something that I learned from Midori, who is an amazing, amazing educator in kink, BDSM. She's an artist, Auntie Midori. So you can check her out, plantmidori.com, or I think Plant Midori on Instagram. She's amazing. So, ladies, beauties, it's about what would please me now. So you may have very well had a sexy date lined up and knowing that this is the night, maybe you've built things up a little bit, and you know what? You're not in the mood. Doesn't feel good for you. So how can you get what you want and also create connection and desire? Because the man, I'm sorry, I'm using very generic men, woman, but the partner, all they want is for you to be happy. That's it. Because if you're happy and switched on and turned on, then they're turned on. So it's not about turning on your partner. It's actually about you being turned on. And then that turns up your partner on. So you could very well go up and be like, I know I thought we would have a sexy date tonight, but, today's been a really long day. It feels so good for me, though, is to have, if you could be so wonderful to pour me a bath and a glass of wine, and, who knows how I'll be feeling after I've had some time to decompress and rest and just get into my body. Would you be willing to do that for me?
What that does for me, the answer is, yeah, I'd love that. And what you're doing for me as the masculine is you're setting me up to win. You're telling me how I can win with you, not win over you. There's not like a competition, but how to win with you, how to make you happy. And it's an amazing gift to give each other. You didn't make me read your mind that you've changed your mind and you want something else. It's like you were courageous and vulnerable and revealed it. So it was very enrolling and it courageous. Thank you. And there's another conversation come up a lot in the work. It's like women are in their masculine versus their feminine and stuff like that. And I just heard something that made me think it's like, actually, a lot of times that's not really what the conversation is. Men and women put on armor. And sometimes what we consider the feminine is in their masculine. No, they're not in their masculine. They're in their armor. They're like, because it's shut down. It's what they needed to survive in that environment. And then they come home and they keep the armor on. Men do the same thing. We put on our armor, and sometimes we call armor masculinity, and it's not. It's armor. It's shutting out from our heart. It's blocking us. It's like what we'd go to war in is our armor. And when we come home, it's how do you take the armor off and be vulnerable and reconnect and connect to your femininity or your masculinity or whatever it is, the dynamic that you want in the relationship. So Jessica's thing was setting you up to win. Like, we don't normally have that conversation. I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, so there's a dance in polarity. So the stronger the feminine, the stronger the masculine, the more exciting the dance. It's when we try to neutralize and be kind of masculine and kind of feminine and kind of equal that it fizzles out. It's boring. It's not good. It doesn't wake you up. It's not arousing. So the more that a woman can be in her, whoever can, because there has to be that dance in any group, couple dynamic. So who's going to take on the masculine pole? Who's going to take on the feminine pole? And there are men who are more feminine and there are women who are more masculine. So who's going to take on that pole? And the challenge I had with my relationship I was in earlier this year is he was very much into his feminine. He was really tapping into the divine feminine. Well, then if we're doing a polarity dance, what does that mean? That means I have to be in my masculine to keep the polarity going. And so, and this isn't static. Like, this isn't like you're always this, you're always that. Like, we can shift poles, but there still has to be that dance. If someone's going to step in as the feminine, okay, that means the other one goes in as the masculine, and you shift and you shift and you shift. And that's part of the dance. But men play to win. They play for points. They must know that they're going to win. So when you, and this is Alison Armstrong work, so when you tell a man exactly what you want, that is going to bring you so much pleasure and joy. The key is you knowing what you want. If you don't know what you want, you cannot possibly expect someone to be a mind reader. None of us are mind readers. So until you know what you want, and then you can ask for it, and you can say it in such a way that they would trip over themselves to make it happen. And if they don't deserve you. And also knowing that you're not misleading them, that you're not promising them, well, if you pour this bath for me, I'm going to have sex with you. No. You're saying this is what would please me. And let's see how I feel after an hour of soaking and relaxing and getting my body. Wouldn't you want to make love with someone like that anyways? Rather than, well, we had an agreement, so, I know you're tired, but it's on the calendar, so let's do it.
Duty sex.
Yeah, that goes a really long way with connection. So, we as women owe it to ourselves that because we've overridden our signals of our body of what is a yes and what is a no, that men can't read it. And most of them have had sex with a woman who silenced her no.
And here is an odd metaphor. Jessica, have you ever had a dog as a pet? You can just nod your head. You don't. Okay, so do dogs like bones? All right. Actually, maybe you should unmute yourself just for a second here.
Yes.
Do dogs like bones?
Bowls or bones?
Bones. Do
Yes.
dogs like bones? Yes. Well, actually, if you gave a dog a choice between steak and a bone, which would they take?
Steak.
Every time. We settle for bones. Most people are in relationships and settling for bones. They settle for scraps. They settle for obligatory duty sex. Whoops. For some reason, it's gotten the wild static again.
Yep.
So what you were talking about is like how to have the steak versus the bone. And the challenge is you have to make friends with your needs
With
to
your
be able to,
desires.
yeah, and to ask about them and like, and do it in a way that is amazing. So I'm going to mute myself and give it to you.
So, beauties, how do you ask for what you want? How do you express your desire? And then how do you hold yourself in that? Because I feel like it would be really great if I could have a bath and like a glass of wine. That'd be really cool. Like, I really like that. Not very inspiring. It'd be so great. I'd really love. I'd really love if you could pour me a bath, get me a glass of my favorite wine. I would love that so much. Would you be willing to do that for me? So you need to know how to carry yourself, how to hold your body, and how to speak from a place of I deserve what I desire, and I'm going to get it. Whether you give it to me or whether I make my own bath, but one of us is going to win, or both of us could win. Which do you choose?
So, Jessica, maybe this would be a good time because what your group is doing, and I don't know exactly what your Facebook group is doing, but I believe what it's doing from the outside is helping. There's this term of empowering women, and I think that that's the wrong term because it's helping women remember how powerful they are. It's not giving them power, it's reminding them of their power. And for women, I think that are interested in that, it might be great to know what your group is, what you do. And then if people are interested in remarkable relationships, I'll talk a tiny bit about what I do and how they can learn from me. So I'm going to give it to you first, and I'm going to take a second and put your banner up.
Oh, thank you. So, just so you know, I spent 15, 20 years in the corporate world. So I know all about this. I know all about the matrix and all of that stuff of what it is to be asleep at the wheel and be numbed out, tuned out, and unhappy with your life. And wanting to fill that void with any program, product, food, relationship, whatever it is, to fulfill that void. What it's like to carry pain that you're not willing to look at, having traumas, having shadows, deep, deep things, and feeling alone in that and not being able, ready, or willing to see it. In my journey the last 3.5 years, it took me out of corporate America and into this other, much more magical, amazing world. I've created a posse. It's 1 month old as of yesterday, and it's a safe space for beauties, men or women, but it's predominantly women, to come in and feel safe to be seen, to stand in their courage, to face their shadows, to stand in their power, and to be in their magic. Because we need all the women to get switched on, turned on, and online into who they are and who they came here to be. And I incorporate that as a dominatrix in my energy, and also as a fierce love, as an oracle, which is the embodiment of the divine feminine, and being a shaman, which is going in and doing the shadow work. And it's for women who are like, I'm done with my stories. I'm ready to step into my glory. I'm ready to step into the glory of who I am and who I be and who I came here to be. And it's a love, it's a secret Facebook group. So it's called the powerpriestessposse.com. And then the website that Paul so graciously put on the banner is for those who want to do one-on-one work with me, because I do it all. So if you are wanting to become a mother and do conscious conception, it's really important that you do your inner work to clear your womb of any debris and imprinting and traumas you've carried on through your lineages, through the ancestral line and in this lifetime, so that you can birth a child truly free, which is the greatest gift you could give. And then there's those who are ready to go into the descent, face their shadows and their darkness. those who are ready to step into their feminine dominance and in their power, because it's not about being in the bedroom. We need you to be dominant in your life. A woman who's in her power and her authority and knows who she is, what she wants, and what she stands for. These are really powerful things. And there's, some other offerings that I do for those who want to do really deep work. This is for those who are ready to rise. So that's a little bit about me.
And right now, if you listen to Jessica and there's part of you that's like really uncomfortable, especially for the women, and going like, oh my God, that sounds scary, crazy. Like you get something in your stomach or your hands are starting to sweat a little bit. That most likely is your body telling you, yes, this is the path. It's time to have a breakthrough in that area. I focus on a different part, and I think that it's so complementary because powerful women get into powerful relationships. And my job is to help people create remarkable relationships. And the challenge is to do that, you need remarkable relationship skills. And most people don't look at relationships as skills. It's like they treat it like it's luck. If I'm just find the right person, then I can stop working on myself. It's like I call it relationship lottery, because when people win the lottery, what do? They quit working. And if I just get in the right relationship, I can quit working. It's like, no, you get in the right relationship. It's worth working on. It's worth growing on. So if you want to spend a little bit of time together, get clear where you are, where you want to go, what's in the way, and have somebody guide you through this. I work with people around the globe, basically, and we spend about 3 months together, and it is transformational. And I deal with small issues like jealousy, betrayal, heartbreak, broken agreements, decisions, trust, lost intimacy. The relationship is crumbling. You don't know how to communicate with each other anymore. That's what we do. That's a regular basis. That's what I deal with and help people have breakthroughs. And if you go to that website, you can look at the stories of people that have had those breakthroughs. And then Jessica was overly kind. I don't know. I'm not saying this right. She recorded my book, like read the whole thing. It was an amazing recording. And for people that start working with me, they're going to get a free copy of the book and of the recording and the whole thing. So if you want to, go to the website, fill out the survey, and let's spend about 15, 20 minutes together and find out what's really possible. So that's it for me. Jessica, do you have any closing words, or did
Paul has said before on other shows that it's not a lack of love why relationships don't work out. It's that you've come up against a problem that your skill set isn't ready to overcome. And so that's a lot of what Paul's work is. And for me, again, if you're able to look and see that the people in your life are divine players, they're not out to get you, they're actually to help you become free. Because the more the inner work that you do in yourself and the more transformation and healing you have within you, your relationships will immediately transform as well. And that might be them spinning out. Great. It might be them up leveling. Amazing. But until you take a stand for who you are and the kind of relationship and life you want, you're going to keep having the same rundown, boring ass relationship. And we didn't come here to have a boring life. We came here to have a life of true divine magic. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's like the Helen Keller quote. Life is either a grand adventure or nothing at all. Can you mute yourself? It's the static is going a little crazy there. So in closing, I'll say one last thing. Thank you. The people that have, there was people from India, there's people from all around the country on here. What would be really sweet, and especially if you're watching the replay or whatever, but what did you get from tonight? What resonated with you? Was it something Jessica said? Was it something I said? I would love to have your comments, and I go through and I'll read all of the comments and I'll respond to whatever ones I can. And if you've got any specific questions for either of us, make sure to reach out and be part of, if you're a woman that wants to really be part of an amazing community, join her group of priestesses. Because right now the planet definitely needs some major feminine warrior goddess energy out there, because we're in a questioning point, like where are we going to go and what are we going to do? So let's rock this. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. This is Paul Sterling, and we are checking out.